President Bola Tinubu signed the Electoral Act of 2026 into law, a move the presidency describes as a step forward, strengthening Nigeria's democratic framework. But critics argue that some of the amendments raise new questions about transparency, electronic transmission of results, and the balance between technological safeguards and manual processes. Now, supporters say the law closes technical loopholes, while skeptics warn it could deepen mistrust in the electoral system. So, does this amendment strengthen the ballot or strain public confidence or even further? Now, joining me to discuss this evening is Dr. Sam Amadi, the director of the Abuja School of Social and Political Thought. I also have Austin Aigbe, is the regional Advocacy Officer of West Africa Democracy Solidarity Network, and also a member of the Situation Room. Gentlemen, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
All right, let me first start with you, Dr. Sam Amadi. Once again, thank you for joining in. I mean, your opinion on this, will I call it a very contentious amendment, which has continued to generate reaction even after President Tinubu has signed it, into law. This former bill that is now law. Looking at the move of Mr. President and the follow-up reactions that we've seen, the protest outside the House, the rancor within the House itself, what's your take, sir?
Well, thank you for having me. Again, this is democracy, but perhaps the bad side of it first is that three things are happening. One, the National Assembly has responsibility to make laws, and they have made law. The president has powers to assent or not to assent. He has assented. The citizens have the right to assemble, express their support or lack of support or their grievance around proposed lawmaking. And I think we've done that very effectively. But the outcome is disappointing because the incentive structure of the Nigerian polity is such that legislators don't have sufficient incentive to listen to the people. So days of protests, you can see there's almost unanimity around opposition politicians, around civil society leaders, professional leaders, the NBA, everybody, a set of engineers on the centrality of real-time electronic transmission with no default. But that key provision was rejected because the ruling party primarily is not comfortable with it. They would like a system that provides, to be more charitable, we don't want to say rigging, but provides more opportunity for human intervention in the system. So, end of the day, it tells you the limit of democracy as a formal process. The processes were legal, constitutional, but the outcome was undemocratic in that it creates now the possibility that the election, the level of trust, legitimacy, and confidence in the electoral system, the level of electoral integrity might have been compromised. And
Doctor, so basically, just to be sure of your point on this, basically what you have said, what you're saying is that this further creates a loophole, a gap, maybe even broadens the mistrust, in the system as against addressing some of the challenges that, Nigerians experienced in 2023.
Absolutely, because what made it more graphic or more intense, the division and the distrust is more legible and clear because the people had zeroed in on IREF, the IREF malfunction or the deliberate mismanagement of the IRF and the arguments in the court around the non-obligatoriness of electronic transmission. I think the core issue, and so people expected that this issue would be solved, clear, no gray area. INEC NCC report shows that it's doable. INEC themselves said they could do it. So it turned out that the ruling party and these legislators did not support. So it communicates clear to the people. Whereas evidence and facts show that this provision is actually very effective in controlling manipulation and malpractices in election. But the government, the party in power, refused to enact. So the only message it communicates is that the real elites prefer a system that is potentially manipulable. And so people will argue that following Murphy's Law, if something can fall, it will fall. So the logical thing is that if there's a potential, and that's what Mike Guinea said some time ago, that there are going to be widespread technological failure, because you have provided a law that technological failure would trigger manual, and then we're going to see that the default will now be failure and manual, not the other way around. All
right, thank you so much, Dr. Amadi. We'll go on our first break. When we return, I'll be coming straight to Mr. Austin Aigbe, and then we'll be playing, well, I call it a short sound on tape of Mr. President's reaction and also the reaction of Senator Godswill Akpabio after this bill was signed to law. Stay with us, O'Brien.
It is time that we have confidence in our system. No matter how good a system is, it's managed by the people, promoted by the people, and the result is finalized by the people. In fact, for final results, you are not going to be talking to the computer, you are going to be talking to human beings who will announce the final results. And when you look at the crux of various arguments, maybe Nigeria should question our broadband capability. How technically are we today? How technically will we be tomorrow to answer the call of either real time or no? And as long as you appear personally as a...
Well, a lot of provisions in the amended act would definitely make Nigerians very happy. We did a very thorough job, very painstaking. We took cognizance of the peculiarities of the country. We did not allow too much outside interference, and we're very patriotic in our submissions. And at the end, we believe strongly that what the President has just assented into Act of Parliament will make for a better election in the future and will also lead to prosperity.
Well, you just had, of course, what I call it, you watched the video of the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, President Bola Tinubu, and also the Senate President, Senator Godswill Akpabio, speak after, of course, the bill was signed to law. I would like to bring you in, Mr. Austin Aigbe, to react to some of the things that was said in that sound on tape. First, the President, of course, did congratulate and appreciate the effort of the House. But one thing that he also said in that video is that, looking at the reality, technical reality of the country, he used the word broadband capability. One would also, to maybe according to him, justify that clause that was, left hanging. While the Senate President, of course, in that video also said they did a thorough job without interference.
You don't expect the President to go contrary to what the majority of members in the House has said. You had a conversation that it was the minority having their say and the majority having their way. And the President hurriedly, in fact, the swiftness in which the President signed the Electoral Act must be commendable, because it has never happened in our electoral architecture, even since from 1999, since the Fourth Republic, in less than 24 hours. That should be commendable, really, that the President didn't have any problem with it. It means that there could be, like he said, that the President said, he participated, he followed the process. So there was no need to waste time in signing. Because the real bane of that Electoral Act were two parts. It was Section 84 and Section 63. The reason for the safeguard, which of course the argument from the Senate, and of course every other person support that addendum in the Section 60 subsection 3, was clear that it provides safeguards. But you created a safeguard, you then open up room for loopholes. So why did you not just say if it's going to be safeguard, where technology failed or where communication failed, manual communication will go on until such a time the communication is restored, so that we will wait for it. So why, if the purpose, like the Senate President continually said, that are we going to be waiting? If you think that you're going to shut down internet on election day, that we have to move on manually, why don't you say, because you don't have the intention to shut down internet or you don't have the intention to create communication failure, why don't you put a caveat to say, based on unforeseen circumstances, manual coalition will move on until such a time the communication is restored, so that there will be that follow through to the process. What has happened with the new act is clear. And let me commend the introduction of the electronic means and the IREF in the piece of legislation, which is critical, which was part of the bane of the 2023 judicial process. But having settled that, they understand that the only way to kill the same provision, to kill the same IREF, was to create that proviso and then introduce that addendum to say, we know it will fail, because we already have a mindset that we fail. And for me, sitting right here, I already know that there will be communication on election day in 2027, that the communication will fail. Therefore, we will now move to collation manually. So there will be no resort to whatever you are seeing online. So the kind of new world is moving from green cheese to communication failure. It's just a buzzword. It's new narrative.
I want to ask you, Mr. Aigbe, I want to ask you, I mean, with reflection to the last general election in 2023, and with some of course, the clauses that have been adjusted in this bill and all of that, can you confidently say that some of the challenges that Nigerians witnessed in the previous general elections, this bill has taken care of it?
Exactly. I just said that. I said the 60 created a very fantastic opportunity where it now gave legal backing to the electronic tech in our electoral system. And by mentioning IREF specifically, created an opening, a transparent process, but it then created a supposed loophole. That's what I'm saying. That if the Senate truly recognizes that there could be failures, I don't have a problem with if you put the caveat, which is never supposed to be in that session. That session was clearly on electronic transmission. Meanwhile, what operates in the Nigeria electoral system is manual. The only two places where electronic comes in is accreditation and transmission of the form ECAA in a PDF or in a JPEG form where you snap it. When you hear people, including Mr. President, talk about hacking, broadband, it actually calls for sceptic questioning. Mr. President knows that this country is too developed. Mr. President knows, he has been around this country. Mr. President knows that in 2023, results were transmitted. Mr. President knew that Lagos State election in 2023 were transmitted. Mr. President also knows all of those. When we say broadband is not covering all of the area, can we resort to what INEC knows? INEC in 2018 has already done a report. I was part of a meeting where the then INEC chair presented a report to the society to say that from the conversation they had with NCC, the broadband coverage, the coverage at that time was around 90%. We are still talking about broadband 6 years after. I don't expect this because we are sending a wrong message to the international community. I'd like Mr. President to retract that word to say our broadband is okay because you send money from wherever you are, people receive it if they have access in the rural community and they receive it appropriately.
All right, Dr. Aigbe, Mr. Aigbe, thank you so much. I would like to, of course, bring in Dr. Amadi to react to some of the things that have been said, but I would also like to read an excerpt of a statement Mr. President did put on his X handle. Part of what he said is that the amendments are not about politics. They are about process. They are about closing gaps, strengthening procedures, and providing greater clarity to those who conduct and participate in our elections. Let me stop there.
Well, it's typical political talk. And then you would expect the president to say what he said. Good speech, good rhetoric. The key thing is that the final output of that process compounded the lack of transparency, compounded the biggest clarity that the president wanted would have been, bingo, just put the electronic transmission as it is and not those caveats. But like we said, Nigeria, everybody knows what they're doing. The president and his party had a legislative agenda which they successfully pushed. Like I said, legit in politics, in democracy, that as long as they're legal, constitutional, due process, but essentially undermines integrity of elections. So they have crafted a legal regime that allows for manipulation. Now the rest now is not that it will lead to manipulation. It's potentially an avenue. It now depends on the integrity of INEC, which is very low now, on how INEC uses this legal framework and manage their electoral officers and ensure that, because the law will not tell INEC that there's a failure. The law doesn't tell INEC. It's INEC and the officials who will now say, oh, there was a failure, no failure, and put the incidents form. So ultimately, it will fall back on the integrity of the electoral management system. And in Nigeria, with the appointing process, with the caliber of people who are there, with INEC's history of corruption and manipulation as an institution, there's so much loss of confidence. Otherwise, this piece of legislation is not a terrible blow. It's a bad outcome, but not a terrible blow to electoral integrity.
All right.
Because laws are never perfect. Laws are always require human engagement and management. And if the human element is good, they can make up for the bad law. We've seen in 2022 a fairly good law with good regulations by INEC. Everything that you're talking about, for example, failure of technology was provided by Clause 48. Clause 38 provides for 3 modes of transmission, both electronic collation, IREV, and manual. And it provided that when there's a conflict between manual and electronic prevails. And another clause provided that when there's neither no IREV, no electronic collation, and manual destroyed, the police officer will recreate the data with all the copies, with DSS, with police, and ensure, and the parties ensure they are all aligned. So the rules provided for this instance. What failed? INEC failed, and the court failed. So again, warning about the laws, it's good that we are mourning that the ruling party and the legislators failed to do exactly what should have been the best. But again, there's also the institutional aspect of it, INEC, the managerial aspect of it, which is the electoral workers who should have clear instruction in the 98% cases to transmit. I mean,
you keep making reference to INEC. When we return from our next break, we'll look at how much of this law, puts a pressure, particularly on the new SAR of INEC, Professor Josh Amokwito, with, of course, the elections just around the corner, and, of course, the council elections in the FCT, too, just, a few miles away. How much of pressure and, of course, test of grit is it for the new prof? Stay with us. We'll be right back. Many thanks for staying with us. It's still Politics HQ on News Central Television, and of course we are looking, of course, in lieu of 2027 general elections and the controversy and conversations and also reaction around the Electoral Amendment Act. Now, joining the conversation right now is Professor Simeon Nna. He's a political strategist and also a public affairs analyst. It's great to have you, sir. Thank you for joining the conversation. I still have my guest. I have Dr. Sam Amadi. I also have Austin Aigbe. Gentlemen, thank you for staying with me. Let me come to you, Professor. Now, Prof, with everything that we've seen and this new law, I would like you to speak particularly how much this would impact on INEC itself. Do you see extra pressure, particularly on the new chief of that agency?
Well, it depends on his integrity. If he wants to be up to speed with the citizens, I think, yes, it's going to put a lot of pressure on him. Although what we're doing now is an academic exercise, because the deed has been done. They know what they are doing from day one. It's going to put pressure on him because the people that are going to be recruited, for instance, the presiding officers are the people that are going to be at the front. I was listening to Mike Ikini, one of the most respected former commissioners of INEC, and he said something very germane. He said, what is going to happen now is that they are going to compromise some of the presiding officers, and they are going to put their life at risk. Because if the presiding officers say there's no network, and people around there see network on their phones, they might decide to take it out on him. So you see, they are putting the presiding officers in danger, and that will put a lot of pressure on the chairman himself. He's new in the saddle, so he's just learning the ropes. So right away, I think he's going to double his efforts to see that he gives a credible election. That is, if he actually wants to give one. Because like Dr. Amadi said, in the last election, it was not the IREF that disappointed. It was INEC chair that disappointed. Recall that he called the people that came, the people that came to represent the political parties. He told them to go and rest, that they will reconvene by 3. Around 1:30, he came and announced the results. So, and that glitch was caused by them, because Amazon that hosted the IRF said at the back end, there was no glitch. So you see, it depends on the integrity of the chairman now. If he has the integrity and he wants to give Nigerians a credible election, he has to be up and doing. Otherwise, we are in for a very big mess. All right. But the politicians don't learn anything.
All right. I'm going to leave you alone for a moment, Professor, and direct the same question to Dr. Sam Amadi.
Okay, the question around INEC. So, okay, look at it this way. The mechanism of election is intricate. Oftentimes, people think that the INEC chairman or INEC commissioners control all the incidents. So you have INEC, you have 36 NFCT, National REC, Regional Electoral Commissioners. You have secretaries, local government, EOs. So these large structure of election management personnel needs to be effectively managed. And what INEC usually used to do that, the regulations and guidelines, which the Supreme Court wrongly classified as not mandatory. And so INEC will find a way with electoral transmission now recognized in law, that has been partly dealt with. So INEC challenge will not be how to ensure that they do not have too many incident forms. Because if they follow the old pattern, then POs will need to sign and explain that they could not upload for various reasons. Now, if I was INEC chairman, I will go into rulemaking process in a very strategic way, which will be a rulemaking process that outlines circumstances limited by law, by regulation, where you can apply. What does it mean to say technical hitch? So again, if the IRF itself can capture without data, so it means that you can all capture and use your what do you call it? Your manual copy for collection. Now, there's a trick in that act. The trick is that I think they have made the 7 days window for INEC to review election only for what they call duress. It's a terrible legislation. People are not looking at that. You see, under the act that exists, INEC has the capacity to sit back at the National Secretary, the National Office, and review results before declaring, especially in presidential election, 7 days. They seem to be suggesting that can only happen under duress, meaning meaning it's only when you force an INEC official with gun that can trigger. So in other words, they have hamstrung INEC. INEC cannot declare, change the result that a very corrupt POs, polling officer, enters. Now, if INEC chairman wants to stop rigging, he probably will not close his chest who are going to be the PO. He probably will create a process to ensure that those people are not compromisable. Essentially, it looks like the act has laid a lot of groundwork to rig election.
All right. All right. Mr. Austin Aigbe, I would also like your take on this, particularly also just adding a bit to it, and that's the involvement of political parties and politicians, who are also key stakeholders in this process.
So let me state that INEC does have an independent role. Once a law is passed by the Parliament, INEC then creates regulations that matches the law. For instance, with Section 69 in place, subsection 39 in place, INEC creates an enabling law to manage that. I want to recommend to INEC that in creating an enabling law, incidents form, like Dr. Amadi said, should not even be should not be thought of at all. I would suggest that what INEC could do is that you can put it there when communication fails and presiding officers, and party agents, along with observers, agrees that communication has failed. In the result sheet, let there be somewhere they can sign, not any form of incident form. Meaning that, because you can leave there and go and create an incident form, it will be on the form EC8A. Another suggestion is, because we are not very afraid that there may be transparency concern, I want to recommend to INEC to bring back from EC60E. That from EC60E was actually what created the IREF in the first instance. From EC60A is a poster-like result sheet that is posted at the polling unit. If you have written the result from EC8A, transfer the result to from EC60A, citizens and everybody will take the picture there. So let it be democratized. If INEC communication fails, or in case, because we are only talking about INEC, what about when we get to the Uganda model, when internet is shut down on election day, citizens are like, cannot have access. Paste that result at the polling unit. When we snap it, by the time you restore internet, even if you restore it 100 days time, we will upload that result that is on the polling unit. Then it has to match with the result that was announced. We need citizens to be active at this time. INEC must create. In fact, we're not even talking about another secondary problem. There's another problem that usually emerges. When results are written at the polling unit, it can be disqualified at the ward level. If there are typo errors, if there are typo challenges, the returning officer has the right, the power to tell the presiding officer to go and amend those errors in that from EC8A. So the part of the protocol is to make sure that if you edit anything on from EC8A, you upload the two. INEC must create those protocols on how to manage when there are differential in polling unit results and in the ward collation center. All right.
Thank you so much. We'll go on our final break. When we return, we'll be taking our final thoughts on this. We'll also explore the involvement and roles of other actors, and also when it comes to public enlightenment. How much of it have we seen so far? Stay with us. We'll be right back. Many thanks for staying with us. It's still Politics HQ on News Central Television. I still have my guest with me, and of course, we are gradually winding down. I would come back to you, Professor Simeon. Now, Professor, let's talk about the role of other key stakeholders in this process, and part of it has to do with Nigerian people. Let's look at level of enlightenment out there, and also what appears to be what we've observed, how suddenly the process, looking at previous elections, have become heavily supposedly monetized. What do you think can be done?
a Senate plan, what will be done is that people will be arrested and made scapegoats. And once you do that, it will set jittery down the line. I've consistently argued that Nigerians are law-abiding citizens. The challenge we have had is that of leadership. And look at the Buhari Diabo regime. All they needed was to promulgate a decree and use somebody as a scapegoat, everybody will line up. But when you watch your leaders disobey the laws, the very laws they made, what do you expect? You expect the followers to follow their rulers, actually, because we don't have leaders in this country. We have rulers. Let me correct an impression. My brother on the other end, Mr. Austin, gave some valid advice to INEC. But those advice will work in a Senate clan, not in Nigeria. If you look at what happened with the shambolic judgment given in the last election, 2023, you will find out that any rule that INEC is making will not fly, because that was the challenge we had. The Supreme Court was saying that their rules cannot supersede the law. So bringing out another form that was not mentioned in that act will not fly, because at the end of the day, that's one of the areas they will stand on and make nonsense of the votes. So let's restrict ourselves to the forms EC8 that was mentioned in that act. And like Dr. Amadi said, well, the incident forms, you cannot avoid it at this end, because that's what they are arriving at. When they said, if there is no network in the place, you see, people were saying, INEC came out to say that in the last election, apart from the glitch they had at the presidential election, they had up to 97 transmission of those results, 97% transmission of those results.
Okay.
So what is stopping us now? They went ahead to say, Guinea went ahead to say that in rural areas, that 2G, 3G can help in pushing this things, that they had a coverage of 97% in 2023. So what are we doing in 2026 or 2027 rather?
All right. Thank you very much, Professor. Let me, of course, take the final remarks of Dr. Sam Amadi in 30 seconds. I mean, if you were to sort of advise not just INEC, even political parties and the Nigerian populace, as regards this process, in 30 seconds, what would you tell them?
Be more intense, be more committed, engage stronger, intensely. Look, elections outcomes are not only about the law. The law is important, but we can reduce the harm they intend to cause by intense, intelligent, and clever engagement, especially the political parties. The parties have been very, very uncommitted. If you look at the US model, day one, you don't hire lawyers after the fact. You hire lawyers from now to press. Again, INEC has to be forced to have a much more what we call regulatory rules that allow the people to see through and INEC to be constrained. You can't just allow officials to do whatever they like. Rules, institutional design, can open up greater room for accountability and transparency.
All right, thank you very much. How about you, Mr. Austin Aigbe? 30 seconds.
Matter is this, I have followed elections for too long. I understand that INEC still have the power to make regulatory laws, which is subsidiary. But what I'm saying, rather than blaming INEC ahead of time, it is still the same institution that will conduct the election. Why don't we make proposals that help to strengthen this architecture? I am not saying, if they don't do it, they have the, because there are 12 members of INEC, which are the national commissioners. They have the responsibility to create an enabling environment that we are asking for. Above all, political parties, I speak to you, you have the responsibility within the law to deploy party agents. 156,000 plus polling units. You cannot tell me that you deploy 10 or 15. Your party agents are the first line of accountability and transparency.
All right.
That one, if technology glitches, or there's communication failure, or there's internet shutdown, the party results from EC8A in its original format is still there, which can be transferred around the world. I am saying that let's not rely on government that can shut the internet on election day, advising INEC to create something that make them accountable, that make them independent in its true sense, what I'm proposing, rather than just accusing and putting on the dust on INEC table.
All right, so gentlemen, I'd like to say a big thank you for your time on the program this evening. Thank you for being a part of the conversation.